paper and I guess the founder of Lost Surfboards. He was saying that, he was kind of bringing it back to the early 90s and how, at least in skateboarding, there was that period where the skaters sort of took back the industry from kind of more like corporate minded people. And his take was, and I appreciate this about him, is he was like, this will bring in more like the saltwater roots of the sport. That may not look great on paper. That may not look great in sort of quarterly reports, but in terms of just what the surf industry is comprised of, it'll bring like the pretenders will be thrown out or the posers will be thrown out and the people who are the real deal will stay, or the people who are the real deal will kind of rise to the surface. So it's going to be interesting, but I will say this, I think it's too early to say, of course, but I personally, it felt more dire a month ago than it does now. The fact that states are opening up right now and people are going back to work. I was preparing for like this utter collapse of everything and almost like preparing for like the Cormac McCarthy, the road scenario where it's just going to get that bad, or like Road Warrior.
Yeah.
And it does.
Mad Max.
Yeah, exactly. Mad Max. Exactly. But it doesn't feel like it's going that way now. So things may recover quickly, but I don't know. But I definitely think like the surf industry has had to, there's been a huge panic, of course.
I've noticed a lot of industry people have become real estate brokers or agents.
Interesting.
Yeah. Huh. I find it really interesting, actually, especially Alan Sarlo kind of then started the trend, you could say.
I've seen a lot of that with folks from Malibu that I grew up with. And I think there's something, there are two sides. But one, a lot of these guys surfed through their college years, so they weren't necessarily focused on careers. And then they suddenly were turning 30, and then what's the next thing to do? And there is a kind of poetic justice, I guess, to these $1 million homes in Malibu being sold by guys who actually grew up there and surfed there. That's better than another alternative.
Totally.
But I do think I think in some instances it's something that you can you don't have to go through 4 years of college to get there,
No, it's great. Like it's really interesting, like seeing all these people who I would see in the industry, and you see them having to leave the industry too, is like that's a difficult thing to do sometimes too, I find. Yeah,
for sure.
Like adjusting to a more, I don't want to say a normal industry, but like an industry that's not like all around like the thing that you love or you're passionate about.
No, that's really true. But it's interesting, and it depends on like sort of which specific period in the surf industry. Not so much now, but I've definitely been around enough to see there are periods in the surf industry where I could see that a lot of the folks who were hardcore surfers, their first love was surfing, and they found a way to work for one of the brands, let's say. But then the brands were getting so big and they were publicly traded that they may as well have been working for any other company, because the kind of like surfy vibe or the saltwater thing was really gone. And I can say this, like, I remember going to Quicksilver, who I've been close with and was sponsored by, going into the building to see friends or whatever. And there was like this paranoia of, this job position I have is really tenuous and someone might take it from me. And it was to me, it was, yeah. It was like the kind of broishness, so to speak, or the extended family that supposedly is the surf industry. It's sort of the more dollars are in there, the more that goes away. And so that's another thing in regards to Biolas's comment about how it could actually get really cool if it's less money driven, it might be more rootsy.
It'll be interesting, particularly like how that stacks with like the WSL and their direction of surfing too, and how will that diverge? Will it coincide? Will it morph into to each other? Like, there's obviously, there's a beach grit contingent, we can say, who definitely love to throw cans and rotten tomatoes at them. But
yeah.
But it's interesting because they have the money, and it doesn't look like they're going anywhere. They just announced more plans. To redo the whole tour, which is really exciting, I think.
I think so too. And I love watching. It's my favorite sport to watch by a mile.
Absolutely. Although watching Cuomo on every day give a press conference has become a new sport for me. It's been interesting.
I know, how wonderful. You're talking Andrew or Chris?
Andrew.
No, I know.
Andrew.
He's been so good. I mean, I admire you guys.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm curious, like where the WSL will take it all, and where will the industry follow?
Yeah,
because Quicksilver and all them, they're not really doing surf contests anymore.
Yeah,
like
I know.
If I'm not, so it's.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think I watch it closely, and I'm fascinated by it. I mean, I remember years ago there was a literary journal founded in LA. This would have been probably 2011, 12, and it was called Slake. And it was almost like the Surfer's Journal of literary journals, and it was working. It was kind of kicking against the idea of everything's going digital, and it was sort of like, okay, the more things go digital, the more we believe that there will be a need for almost like the kind of whole like makers movement, right? Against kind of like, automatons, things that are made by a factory machine, whatever. And I remember, I was friends with all these folks, and I wrote some pieces for them. And I remember we did a little kind of Slate tour, and one of the editors said, this was explaining what Slake is. And they said, oh, it's kind of this counter trend. And the word counter trend really stuck out in my mind. And I thought to myself, in watching surfing for many years, whenever things sort of sway to an extreme direction, there's always a counter trend. And I think the way the WSL for the last few years have sort of, sort of spruced up surfing in a way that at times to me feels like the NFL. And it's very different to the IPS or the ASP, where everyone involved is deeply entrenched in surfing. And what we've seen is kind of this counter trend of the soul surfer guys, or the retro board rider guys, or, folks who just they're like, that whole athleticism side of it is almost a joke to them. Like, that's not why they started surfing. And yeah, I'm curious to see where that's going to go now with, because I mean, it has been sort of growing and growing and growing, getting bigger, more and more kind of athletic. We see a lot of like extreme athleticism in the sport, and it's interesting to think of how many people that does not apply at all. And I was going surfing the other day, and I was sort of just pretending like I was getting ready for a heat, and I said to a friend, I want to be the greatest in the world, and it was in total jest, but it was sort of this thing of like, it suddenly occurred to me that like Rocky Balboa or even Muhammad Ali thing can be actually like ripe for a Saturday Night Live spoof. In fact, kind of Strider and Kaipo are doing that on the WSL, which I love. But that thing where surfing has become the clenched fist, the like psyching up with the headphones on at the water's edge. I mean, all of it's fun to watch, but as a guy who's been surfing for a long time, that's definitely not what I grew up with and how it feels now. And so I want to see surfing, reach whatever it's supposed to reach, but I'm sort of fixated on other facets of the sport than that, as much as I do like to just sort of fan out on good surfing.
I wonder, why can't surfing exist like music and just have different genres, styles, have different, sponsors who act as record labels, basically, or something where it's just, I don't know. Like, I feel like it could be so much more. Why? I mean, I don't know why it's always so pigeonholed with people. Like, it's either this or that, where one day you may want to ride a single fin, and another day I'll love to go ride a shortboard, and I like to mix it up. And, sometimes you're in the mood for hardcore. Sometimes you want hip hop. Yeah. And I think, and I think that's what surfing is becoming, because the audience is becoming so much bigger too. Like, there's just so many more people surfing today than any time in human history, I believe.
Oh, I think so, for sure.
So, and with the invention of wave pools, like, it's going to have to do that. There won't be a collective consciousness of surfing like there used to be.
Mm-hmm.
where everything was based mostly in Southern California or a certain part of Australia or a certain part of Europe, where they basically produced the magazines that everyone else, digested and took as gospel, basically.
Yeah.
And now there's just so many varying ways you can get your surf media and culture that it can be so many different things.
No, it's true. No, absolutely. And I'm glad that there are dissenting voices. There are entire web, platforms or I don't want to call them publications, but websites that are just taking the piss and sort of poking fun at. And it's wonderful that exists. I mean, I'm glad because that's like the free spiritedness of surfing that I was always drawn to the whole time.
I know. It's weird because I used to want to be so rebellious and embrace that rebelliousness with surfing, but then a lot of things happen and I'm just like, all right, I'm going to weigh out what I'm going to be rebellious about now.
Right.
It's not like I'm just going to rebel against everything. It's like, well, some things.
No, I think that's a good point, and I so agree with you. But going back to what I said earlier, I'm amazed, and this is maybe because I surf Malibu a lot, but I'm actually kind of happy to see what a selfish bastard will come out of me when a good wave's coming my way in mid the crowd, and how this sort of, it's almost like, I don't know if you've ever had that, I'm sure you have, but like a good plate of food comes your way when you're starving, and it's sort of like your brother reaches in and steals your French fry and you want to just kill him. Like that.
My wife will tell you about those. I just want to no, that's mine.
Yeah. And it's like this weird primal, proprietary kind of energy. And I still have it when I go surfing, and it's sort of like, I'm embarrassed that I'm like that way, but I'm glad that like whatever libido inside of me is still like pulsing in that way for surf,
Oh gosh. I mean, when I'm in the water, particularly, it's, I have my ways of getting my waves, and also, definitely can be a little greedy at times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes you have to remind yourself.
Yeah.
What's it been like for you to watch perfect empty Malibu break?
I got to say, it is hard. I mean, the thing about it is it's sort of beautiful, and it does that, like, talk about the sort of post-apocalyptic, like Mad Max feel. It's like, wait, I never imagined that I would see this quality of waves with no one on it. You occasionally see it during, say, a contest and the water's cleared and there's two guys out or whatever. But no, it's sort of hard to watch, and it does feel like this kind of, there's a real, there seem to be more, at least in sort of Southern California, there are far more surfers than there are like good waves going around. So it's this thing that everyone wants a piece of, and to see them kind of get wasted, it's hard. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's I can't even imagine. Like, I watched it, and I don't have that affinity, and I'm a goofy foot, so but it's still just like mesmerizing, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's so beautiful in some ways. Like, it's torture. It's like that girl you've always wanted, I guess, and you can't, and
yeah,
and you're in love with it, and it's like painful.
Yeah, no, and the other side of it is, I think, when you've surfed for many, many years, there is that kind of mind surfing thing that we do where I am sure sometimes when I'm watching a really good wave, if there was some sort of monitor on me, you would feel my heart rate go up a little bit as the wave sort of, the barrel section or whatever. Like I almost feel like kind of, what's the word? Like physiologically attuned or aligned with the wave.
You should test that. Get an Apple Watch. Go down to the beach. I think you should test this.
That's a great idea. But there's that, and while on the one hand you could argue that that's like, okay, you're getting a vicarious hit of it all by watching it, which you do. And I mean, I used to ride my bike along Zuma Beach every afternoon, and most of the time my eyes were fixed on the waves, and I'd be kind of looking for whatever little tail end wave in that mostly close out of a beach break. But there is such a joy in that, but it's just sort of, it's definitely hard to watch when it's really, really good at a place that is typically so crowded. And my like memories of getting really great waves across the point at Malibu